Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being patient with me. I was doing a bunch of mom things tonight, and so I got delayed just a little bit by traffic and mom things. So I apologize that you guys had to wait just a little bit. Um, Thanks for being here. Hi, Ashley. Hi, AJ. Hi, Martha T. Yes, my doggy is getting steadily better. I will give a full update here in just a second. Hi, Lucy. Hi, Ashley. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Um, I normally, this is not normal for me. My normal third Thursday Ask Megan is a chance for community members to ask me questions on whatever is on their mind. Most of these Ask Megan lives, we have a wide variety of questions, everything from relationships to healing from trauma to healthy parenting and things like that. This time, the majority of my questions, I'm going to say 98% of the questions that I got submitted in advance were about the Daybell case. And so um, that's what we're going to focus on tonight, for better or for worse. It was probably about time to do a little bit of an unpack on that anyway. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about that I haven't had a chance to address in other formats. I did get a chance to clip out some of the audio from this past week, and those are on shorts on my channel. If anybody wants to watch those, if you've seen them, they were just some of the key moments that I thought were really important. I'm also trying to put together an episode for Mormon Stories podcast about the theology of Chad Daybell that came out during the trial this week. And things have just been hectic personally as well. So I am grateful to have an opportunity to focus a little bit on the case, although this isn't my normal Ask Megan thing. So for those of you guys who are new to the channel, every third Thursday, I do an Ask Megan live, and channel members can submit questions in advance to be answered. And then channel members can also ask questions live during the live stream. I usually try to make these about an hour. And the fact that this is going to focus on the case is a little bit out of the ordinary, but it is definitely, I guess, timely because the trial is going on right now, and it's time to address some of these things. So just to give you a heads up about how things are going to go a little bit this evening, I want to unpack my visit to Idaho. Lots of people ask me questions about the memorial and about my visit to Idaho in general, my day in court. So I'm going to unpack a little bit of that. In addition, I had people ask me a lot of questions about the trial itself, some of the testimony that came up during this past week. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to have a special guest a little bit later, I hope. Cresha Easton and I got to meet in person for the first time during the memorial. And as most of you know, or some of you probably know, that she has her own channel where she investigates a lot about the case. And I got a heads up a little bit earlier on that she was also going to be doing a live tonight. And I try as much as I can not to step on the toes of other people who are addressing the same topics that I am. And I didn't want her to have to reschedule, but I got word that she was doing a live also about the case tonight. And so I just called her, she and I talked, and hopefully she's going to be jumping on here towards the end of the stream, because she and I have some overlap in the things that we wanted to talk about, especially with relation to Melanie Pulowski's testimony. So that's possibly going to happen. I did text her the link to join, so I hope that she'll join us a little bit later. So please feel free to save your questions until a little bit later in the stream. So if you're a channel member and you haven't asked me anything question that you would like me to address, I'm happy to do it. But if you ask it right now, I'm probably not going to see it because it's hard for me to monitor chat and talk at the same time. Um, so if you would wait until, and I will tell you like specifically when, okay, now's a good time for people to submit other questions that you have, then I'll definitely make sure that those get addressed. I want to address as many questions as I possibly can. That's the whole point of these third Thursday Ask Me Anything lives, is for people to bring up whatever questions you have. And when you're a member and you get to ask the question in advance, it gives me a chance to research a little bit if it's a topic that I'm not super familiar with, or if I need another expert's help on it. But tonight we're talking mostly about the trial, and I've been watching the trial, so I feel like we're pretty safe with that. And then we'll get to channel member questions a little bit later in the live. So just to start to just talk a little bit, I've gotten lots and lots of questions about my visit to Idaho for the memorial service and how that experience was. And so just to kind of walk through the timeline of that a little bit, the memorial was on Saturday. I actually flew into Salt Lake on Friday because my sister lives in the area. And anytime I have an excuse to visit her, I'm going to do it. So I flew in on Friday, spent some time with my sister, and then drove up to Idaho Falls Friday night. Saturday morning, I had a sound check at the theater at, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was a super early morning. And we tried to work through some of the kinks of the sound stuff. And obviously it didn't all get unkinked, because I think the first song that I sang, there was no microphone. It was Over the Rainbow. That was mainly for Tylee. And for whatever reason, the microphone, I think it was out of battery or something like that. So it didn't pick things up. And then, the rest of the program went pretty well. But for those of you who are watching it on the live stream, there was two of the songs that didn't come through on the live stream. And I think that was because of copyright issues. And so East Idaho News was the entity that was live streaming the memorial service. And I think because of concerns over copyright issues, they didn't want to live stream those other two songs, which were Tears in Heaven and Go High on That Mountain by Vince Gill. So I understand totally why they wouldn't want to do that. At some point, I'm going to post some music on my channel that I sing and or play, and both, whatever. And at some point I'll redo those two songs and I'll post them on my channel. I was glad that the Ave Maria got through. And I just want to say some of the questions that I got were about who chose the music and all of that stuff. And that was Kay and Larry, 100%. That was definitely them choosing the music for the memorial service. I offered a couple of suggestions, and I offered the suggestion of singing one song and playing one song. And Kay and Larry had other ideas. They wanted some specific things and they asked for them. And I couldn't say no to that. So I was happy to try and accommodate everything. Thank you so much, Kayla Nicole. It's super, super kind of you. New Zealand is one of my bucket list visit places. Maybe I'll get there someday. So that was all Kay and Larry choosing that. And I have to say, it's a little strange being in this space, because I know that some people who are following the case know who I am, but seeing people in person was a really unique experience. And after the sound check was over, I ran a couple of errands. Sarah was putting together kind of the reception area, and she needed some things. So I picked up some things and I brought them back to the reception area before I went to go get dressed for singing. And I was coming back out of the venue and somebody was like, "Hi, Megan." And I was like, "Oh, there are people here who know my name." It was like a little bit weird. Did not expect that. Oh, Blue Sea Brandy, you said Fox played them. That's cool. I'm glad they did. If you wouldn't mind dropping a link or finding a link, that would be awesome. Just for my own. And also I want to send it to Kay and Larry too, so that they have a chance to have that. So anyway, it was very healing for me to come into that space and have so much time to talk to people who have been affected by the case and who've been following it, and who have found some value in some of the things that I've said. I will also just tell you, I ran into Adam and Rex right when I got to the venue, and Adam just came up and gave me a big hug and told me that he loved me, and it was really, really sweet to have a little bit of a reunion with him. He and I have texted back and forth, but we haven't seen each other in a long time. And I've watched some of the things on their channel, the Silver Linings Podcast, and I think I've expressed before that I think there still is a little bit of denial on the part of Adam and Rex about some of the harmful family dynamics and also some of the harmful religious culture that contributed to this case. And so we don't agree on some things. We don't see eye to eye on some things. And I had a particularly long conversation with Rex about something that he and I disagree on. And it's just interesting to dig into those questions and to talk with other people and hear their perspectives. I definitely heard what he had to say and I understand his position, but I don't agree with it at the end of the day, and that's okay. I think what is important is for family members to dig into those issues on which you disagree, to talk about it respectfully, and to be able to have a conversation where you have different points of view without it turning into an argument or something that's harmful. So, one of the things that I've been advocating in this situation with my family members is to give and receive criticism without, well, specifically to give criticism without judgment and to receive criticism without shame. When we get to the point where we can do that, that is when the really important conversations um, come to light, I think. It is really, really difficult to hear criticism about your person or your opinions or who you are as an individual. Um, but I think it is really, really important to be able to do that, to be able to sit with a criticism and consider whether it's valid and consider whether there are things that you might need to change in your personality or in the way that you handle certain interactions with family members or relationship partners or in the workplace or whatever. And so it's also really hard to hear criticism about your worldview. It's hard to hear criticism about people you love. It's hard to hear criticism about things that you've worked really hard on. And so while I think that it's important to have sort of a thick skin and to be able to accept criticism, it's also really important to be able to give criticism without being judgmental of other people, to be able to say we disagree and that's okay. And we're not on the same page and that's okay. And we have different perspectives and that's okay. Um, I do think that it's important, though, to listen to people with whom you disagree. I think some of the most important things that I have learned have come from listening to people that I disagree with. And it's really easy in the social media age to get into an echo chamber and to only follow the people who agree with your position or only follow the people who are like you and only listen to the podcasts who have opinions that are like yours. I started about probably 5 years ago or so, specifically following people on some of my social media accounts that I knew had a different perspective and opinion than me because I wanted to hear another point of view that was different from mine. I wanted to consider whether some of those points might be valid. And I think that listening to voices that disagree with us is a really good way to keep our minds open and to understand other people's perspective. Ultimately, we are all human beings having a human experience on this planet. And though our experiences are going to be difficult and different, it's super important for us to understand the experiences of other people and to look at each other as human. I think the big turning point for me on that point was back in the 80s when the Cold War was going on. And I think that it was Sting who released a song that was titled something about if Russians love their children too. And he talked about going to meet some of the leadership in Russia. And his consideration was, I love my children, and I'm pretty sure the Russians love their children too. And what we all want for our children is a happy and successful future. And so if they love their children, then they're going to consider things that are going to help their children have a future successful life. It's really, really interesting to be able to listen to other people's point of view and consider that we have more in common than we have differences, that we are more alike than we are different. And we kind of all want the same things. And our beliefs and our experiences definitely separate us on some level. But the more that we can connect with other people and understand their point of view as being really similar to ours and their goals and dreams being really similar to ours, I think the better off that we're going to be. So just as a bottom line kind of thing, there are some things with which I disagree with Adam and Rex's podcast. There are some things that they disagree with my podcast, my perspective, my interviews, the things that I've said. And that's okay. My goal in life is always to dig down to the root cause of things and to the very lowest common denominator of the truth. So if I can have an experience myself, but then if I can also listen to other people's perspective on that same experience, that's how I get the most comprehensive view of things. If I'm only focusing on what I experienced and what my personal viewpoint is, then I'm not really considering the entirety of the experience, and I'm not really opening my mind to listen to other people's voices. So I think that's what's important. So kind of back to the memorial service and unpacking all of that stuff. It was so great to connect with people who've been following the case, to meet in person some of you guys who have been here on my channel and who I've interacted with on social media. It's been amazing to hear the voices of people who were touched by this case and who all want justice for JJ and Tylee and Charles and Tammy. It definitely was a uniting experience because on that day, for those few hours, everybody in that building wanted the same thing. We all wanted to honor the memory of Tylee and JJ. We all wanted justice for them. And that was an incredibly important thing for me to think about, that just all of those people came together to honor the two beautiful children whose lives were taken. And it was, of course, very emotional. I've sung at a lot of memorial services, and so I kind of know the process that I have to go through in order to do that successfully. And I've said before in other places, like, singing at a memorial is never going to be my best singing. It's never going to be my best performance. I have to be willing to let go of my perfectionistic tendencies and just let that go into the ether, because I feel honored to be asked to help people honor the memory of their loved ones. And in this case, it was really personal to me as well. And I feel grateful that I have the ability to contribute in some small way to honoring their memories. And I was grateful that Kay and Larry asked me to do that, because it is kind of the one small thing that I have to give. And even though it's difficult for me and in some ways it delays the grieving that I'm able to do, I really appreciated the opportunity to participate in that experience. And meeting all of these people in person, it was my first time meeting Kay and Larry in person, and Kresha. It was my first time meeting Heather Daybell in person. It was a chance for me to reconnect with Lauren Matthias, who's become a friend throughout this case. And it was just great to be around these people and to be able to just have a common experience of honoring the children and their memories. So after the memorial was over, I was able to go out and get something to eat with Lauren and another podcaster and Kay and Larry and some of their other family members, and also juror number 16 and one of the other jurors from Lori's trial. It was super cool to connect with all of those people. And then some of us decided to go up to Rexburg after that. And it was my first time being in Rexburg since the birth of my grandson in 2020. And it was my first time visiting the Daybell property. It was my first time visiting the townhomes where Lori and Melanie and Alex lived. And I have to tell you, um, those townhomes are incredibly small, and they're not made of the most quality materials, and they're very, very close together. So seeing them in person reminded me that there were probably a lot of things that got seen and heard by those neighbors. I remember first watching that doorbell camera footage of JJ playing outside of the condo, and being there in person, realizing what close quarters those were. All of those neighbors had to see each other coming and going and interact with each other all the time. And so I just wonder if there are more people out there who saw something or heard something that they thought was strange or suspicious or whatever. It kind of makes me want to, and I think Kay and Larry did this. It kind of makes me want to go and knock on the doors of these people and be like, did you see these people? Did you know these people? What were your experiences with them? So that was really interesting. And then visiting Chad Daybell's property, I have to tell you, felt like being on sacred ground to me, knowing that was the final resting place of JJ and Tylee. It was very emotional for me. And there was, for me, a sense of sacredness about it. I know some people have said that they visited that property um, and that they felt creeped out by it. But for me, it felt sacred. I felt a deep sense of reverence there. It put a lot of things in perspective. I was able to see what Heather Daybell called the cozy cone, which was that 2-story building. I did post a video of the day in court when John Pryor was so stuck on telling that witness that it was a 1-story home. And yes, it was a 1-story home on the main part, but there was definitely a 2-story addition on it. There's a video of that on my channel. And then also there are 3 different driveways. There is one driveway that is on the side of the house. There's a gate and then a graveled driveway that goes behind the house. And then in the front of the house, there's the driveway where Tammy Daybell was shot at. And then just to the north of that, there's another gate where you could go through and drive onto the property, the part that is sort of like the field and over by the tree where JJ was buried. And so it was interesting to put all of that into the perspective of the testimony that was given and where the cell phone pings were. So that first ping of Alex on the morning of September 9th would have been that driveway that goes behind the house. And then the second ping would have been that gate that he would have had to go through to get a vehicle onto the property. That Dodge Durango, the black Dodge Durango, was parked beside the house. And to see Emma Daybell's children's toys out in the driveway and like their little play area, and realizing that Emma's kids just play out there. And then there's a separation where there's a gate that goes on beyond where the barn is, where the tools were found, and then where Tylee's body was found. And there was some kind of a structure that had been built on top of where the fire pit used to be. It looked to me like it was small enough that it could have been a chicken coop or something like that. It was just very it was very eerie to see people living there and just trying to lead a normal life there. It was very, very strange. And we know through testimony that was kind of embarrassing to John Pryor that he owns that property, I think, as a sort of payment for him giving Chad's defense because, this has been a very long process, and I'm sure he hasn't got paid what he's used to getting paid as an attorney. It is very strange that he owns that property, and I've talked to a number of different people about, if I had the money, I would absolutely 100% buy that property. I would raise all of the buildings, and I would build some kind of permanent memorial there. But that's down the road. It's in the future. It's something to talk about later. Kay and Larry and I talked about that just a little bit with Kresha as well. When I was visiting, just what would we do? What could we do? And maybe we'll put our heads together and figure that out at some point. But anyway, it really did feel like sacred ground to me. I was glad that I was able to go and put eyes on that property and just kind of see what, just to put into perspective everything I was hearing on the testimony. The next day I was driving over to Boise so that I could be there for trial on Monday. And I stopped by Shoshone Falls. If any of you have ever been there, it was only the second waterfall that I've ever seen where the waterfall area there's so much volume of water going over that you can't see where the waterfall touches the water at the bottom. In other words, there's a ton of mist coming up from there. And the other one was Niagara Falls that I've seen that was that big. And it was a really beautiful experience to be there and to see it was like a constant rainbow because there's so much mist coming up off of the water that it's naturally reflecting off the sunlight. So when it's sunny, there's going to be a rainbow there. And it was just really beautiful. And that was where I found a place to place the lei that I wore during the memorial service that was in honor of JJ and Tylee and their time in Hawaii, a time when they probably were very happy and where they could just be kids and be themselves. And that felt like a good place to deposit that lei in a place like that. And I do have a video about that on my channel as well, if anybody is interested in that. And then getting to Boise to be able to see the trial, I got there around dinner time and I stopped by Kay and Larry's house. Kresha was there and we had an opportunity to just sit and talk for a little while. I thought I would be there maybe for an hour or so, and I ended up staying for like 5 hours. It was very, very late when I finally left. We just could have talked all night long. It was so nice to be able to connect with them and just share some experiences and share some memories and some insight and just some intelligence that each of us had that the others didn't know. It was really a cool night to be able to spend that time with them. And then to be able to get up the next morning and walk into court with Larry. And I tell you, like, that was an amazing experience because Larry says hello to every single person on the way in the courtroom. They all know exactly who he is. They all love him to death. It's just so cool to see him being honored and respected as JJ's grandpa, and they all know exactly why he's there, and he just takes up his own space there, and I think that's amazing and wonderful. It was so cool to be a tag along with him and to sit there with him in court and to try and unpack some of the stuff that that we talked about. So it was really cool to be there with Larry. I will say too, I was able to observe Chad and his behavior in the courtroom. All I can say about that, it was really surreal to see him in person. It was very interesting to watch his body languages and his behavior when certain people were on the stand. He, for the most part, just looked smug to me. He was just smug. And his facial expressions during certain times were just infuriating for me to watch. Also, it was infuriating to see Pryor in action. If you think that his voice and his mannerisms are annoying, man, seeing him in person where he would go over to the podium and he would be asking a question of the witness, but he would be facing the jury. And so it was like, I'm not going to give you the respect of addressing you directly to your face. I'm going to actually ask this question this way. So it would be like, if I was addressing you as my audience, but I would say, audience, don't you think that it's true? Wouldn't you agree with me? Wouldn't you say? It just came across as so arrogant and so condescending. And I really dislike the way that he forgets people's names. He mispronounces words. He gets facts wrong. He misstates the evidence. I'm so glad that they're objecting to that all the time. I've heard people say that he's doing it on purpose. I think it's just because I don't think that he's purposely saying to himself, I'm going to mispronounce this person's name. I think that he just feels like he's so far above everybody else that that's just the way he behaves. And I really think that he just doesn't give people the time of day enough to pay attention to how they pronounce their name, or he doesn't feel like he has to give the time of day to the evidence to pronounce lividity correctly instead of saying lipidity, which isn't even a word. It's just infuriating to see him in person and to watch him walk in and out of the courthouse and all of that kind of stuff where he kind of has his head cocked to the side. It just was really disturbing to see that. But it was great to connect with so many great people. It was wonderful to be able to meet all of these people in person that I kind of have heard about. I was able to meet Aunt Vicky. I was able to meet some of the jurors. It was just really cool. So it was a great experience. I'm glad that I went. I initially wanted to go back for closing arguments and sentencing, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not. I'm still kind of thinking about whether that's the healthiest thing for me to do. So I don't know. I'll keep you guys posted. It sounds like, of course, obviously the defense rested today, and so they finished the evidentiary part of their contribution to the case, and there's no court tomorrow. So on Monday, it's going to be John Pryor beginning his defense portion. And I think the estimate is that he needs a couple of weeks, but with all of his objections and sidebars and all that kind of stuff, who knows how long that's going to take. So I'm getting right into the thick of school ending and graduation time. I've got a son who's a senior this year. He's graduating from high school. And so we've got all of those family things to do. So I don't know if I'm going to make it back to Boise or not. So we'll just have to wait and see. Today was a crazy day in court. Yesterday was kind of a crazy day. The telephone recording that they played between Chad and Lori was really interesting to hear for the first time. So just to unpack that a little bit, and I don't want to go too much of a deep dive into it, but it was interesting to hear Lori and Chad talking about the second coming and the end times. And this is another question I get all the time is, do you think Chad and Lori really believe it? And that's a question I'm going to do a deep dive on another video, because there are a couple of things that I want to specifically address as far as that goes. But to hear that phone call between the two of them, talking still about their plan going forward, I really have believed this entire time that they think that what they're doing is right, it's justified, it's sanctioned by God, however you want to say that, and that they just think that something's gone wrong in the plan, and that's why they're in jail right now. Like, that they still think probably that the end of the world is coming. None of Chad's predictions have come true so far about earthquakes and the end of the world and all of that. Remember, Chad initially thought that there was going to be a big, huge earthquake in 2015. And then there was Chad and Lori said that the world was going to end, or Jesus was going to come in like August of 2020. Well, Lori was in prison by then, and so I bet they probably just think that things got delayed because the police got involved and things like that. So, but listening specifically to that phone call, I thought was really interesting. They went pretty quickly into a metaphorical discussion about what happens when you try to build a house and it doesn't really go as planned. And you've put a down payment, but your contractor has to make different adjustments because they found a problem with your foundation, or they had a problem with the environmental study or something like that. And so they're continuing this metaphor, and they obviously know they're being listened to. There's a lot of nervous laughter in there, but they continue with this metaphor of building the house, and they start talking about Chad texting with Alex, who is dead at this point. And so Chad is trying to perpetuate this narrative that he's in contact with Alex, that Alex is in charge of the plan. He's handling things on the other side. And he told them that there was only a 3% chance that things would fail. And then Lori kind of has some pushback, and she's like, well, it turns out that it was 100% chance that things were going to go wrong because, of the way that things happened. And I see that Kresha is coming in here, so I'm going to add you in. Are you ready, Kresha? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Because I have a little bit of a theory about the last thing they mentioned. Hi, Kresha. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, just excuse the thunder is kind of almost traumatic. Okay. So,
There's a storm
yeah,
at your house and not the
there's
Chad kind.
it's a thunder Chad. I am going to own the thunder Chad because he took over thunderstorm and Lori did too. So
Oh,
I am taking it back.
yikes. Yikes. So here's the thing that I wanted to ask you is that during that phone call that was recorded between Chad and Lori, and they start talking about there's a 3% chance that things are going to go wrong. And then it turned out there was a 100% chance. And then Lori starts talking about, well, can't Alex go and punch somebody in the face or something and take care of that 3%? And Chad's like, well, we don't want to be violent. But I was like, really? Because obviously y'all have been super violent up to this point. And then there was some discussion about, well, the person who caused the 3%, couldn't you go visit them? What was your take on that?
Oh the first time I heard it, I'm trying to listen to it. Oh, okay. Sorry.
That really is loud.
Yeah, they've been rocking and rolling here lately. So, okay, I don't know. I hear my boys. Okay, sorry about that. I'm very like the first time I heard it, I was trying or I went in under the assumption that as Rob Wood, was it Rob Wood? Yeah, Rob Wood and Ray Hermosillo, they trying to enter it into evidence and everything. Um, just from what I was hearing about it, I was just like, okay, so I went in under that assumption. And then listening to it, I was like, okay, this is so freaking weird. I mean, weird. I have like the simplest goober words, you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
weird.
Well,
And then it started to, I was like, they are not talking about, I don't think Chad's trying to manipulate her. I don't think none of that. They are straight talking code to her, to each other. They know they're being recorded.
yeah.
Okay. And, and then, oh my God, then just the things they were saying, I was like, okay, so could that be Melanie Gibb and David Warwick? Are they the 3%ers? Did that blossom and grow? Because initially Melanie Gibb was supposed to marry Alex. And so I was like, what are they talking about? I don't want to know, and I want to know.
Well, okay, here's my take on it. Tell me what you think about it. Who's the
Go.
one person who has caused more trouble for Lori and Chad than anybody else in this entire case?
Heather. Heather Daybell,
I
don't you know?
I think it's Kay. I think it's
Mom
Kay.
too. I thought
Yes.
that too. I'm like, well,
I
but then he
100%.
drops a hint. He
I
drops a hint.
definitely, yeah.
he throws in the Eurythmics, and I'm like, "What?" And you're solo and duo, and I'm like, "What?" But then
Okay,
again, these
so
are people who talk through, Smule accounts,
yeah,
you
it's
know?
crazy. It's crazy stuff, but I will tell you that the Eurythmics was one of Lori's favorite bands. Lolo is definitely her nickname,
Wow.
and so I think that Chad was trying to tell her, "You're not alone in this. It's not a solo act. It's supposed to be a band of people," all of that kind of stuff. So I personally think the 3% was Kay. I think because she was the one who ordered the welfare check, she was the one who pursued all of the
Right.
investigations with the private investigator with Brandon, and she also was the one who who was the beneficiary of Charles's life insurance. So I
Yeah.
really think that that's who they were talking about.
Yeah.
And honestly, I
JJ was
think
totally a revenge kill, I think. I really do. I mean, not that I don't think there was any favoritism whatsoever, you
yeah,
know? Because all the victims, like, they were murdered, deleted,
yeah,
and so
discarded.
it's just yeah, just like trash, just boom and done. And I don't think there was any favoritism going on there, and I think that,
Yeah,
they were pawns just as long as they were of use to them, which makes me my take on the phone call, especially with the whole Alex aspect. Okay, he's deceased at this time. It's June 8th. It's the day before the children are going to be unearthed from Chad Daybell's backyard. Okay. And and so they're talking, and I think that they, just like the religious beliefs, just like everything else that they've used and exploited to get their gain, so to speak, they used Alex, like, him as the conversation, like, it's
yeah.
really weird.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's definitely possible that that Chad was claiming to communicate with Alex in order to sort of give Lori
Yeah.
some comfort that there's still a
Mhm.
plan in place, even though you're in jail, you've been convicted and all this stuff, like, we're still going on with our original plan, right? And things are
Could
still gonna
be.
go forward as normal. I
Oh, I
definitely
oh, I'm sorry. I have something that, and you remind me of this whenever you tell stories about your upbringing with Lori. And so I really think that they're not talking about any of that stuff. They're talking about offing somebody throughout that whole thing. He's not trying to get her. It's nothing to do with, how the state presented it. I was like, yeah, I'm not getting that at
yeah,
all in this
yeah.
call. But one could if one doesn't peel back the layer.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know, Kresha is Kay and Larry's daughter. She has her own channel called Difficult Research. And I found out through one of my mods that she was planning to do a live tonight about Melanie's testimony. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about here just in a second as well. So I invited her to come on to contribute because we have some aligning interests here at the same time.
I think
So
we do.
I told Kresha earlier today, I have recorded 3 different videos about Melanie's testimony in court, and one of them I posted. The first one I didn't post, the second one I posted for a little while, and then I took it down and said that I was gonna post a new one because I wanted to re-record it. I did re-record it, and then I decided not to post that. You guys, it's just there is so much to unpack regarding Melanie and her testimony that it is really, really hard to cover everything in a way that is honest and also fair. And so
Mhm.
I was having a hard time finding the intersection between those 2, and that's why I ended up not posting what I said I was gonna post. So I'm gonna attempt to talk about it just a little bit here with Kresha, and then at some point, I may make a longer video regarding Melanie. But I
Yeah.
started my original now we're talking about Melanie Pulowski here, not Melanie Gibb, Melanie Pulowski. She is the daughter of Stacy, who was Barry and Janice's oldest daughter. So Stacy
Mhm.
was Lori and Alex and Adam and Summer's sister, their oldest sister, and Melanie is the only child of Stacy. And I think in order to understand Melanie, we have to go all the way back to talk a little bit, just briefly, about Stacy's life and marriage to her ex-husband Steve, and about Melanie's upbringing. So yes, we refer to her as Melanice because she is Lori's niece, not Melanie Gibb, who actually is Melanie Phibb. Different Melanie. Melanice, her name ends with an I, Melanie with an I. So just to really briefly talk about Melanie's upbringing. Steve and Stacy were married, I believe, sometime around 1992. They eloped to Hawaii instead of getting married with their family present and in the temple over here somewhere. I remember seeing their wedding announcement with Steve standing with his tux pants rolled up to his knees, and he was holding Stacy in his arms, and she had this beautiful white ball gown wedding dress. And they were standing in the surf with the waves behind them, and I thought it was just the most romantic thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. I thought it was incredible. But my parents did not think it was cool, and neither did most of the family. It was super scandalous that they had eloped and that none of the family was available and all of that. A couple of years later, I was able to visit Stacy and Steve in their basement apartment at BYU, and it was the first time I'd met Steve in person. I was, a teenager at the time, and I just thought that it was really cool that Steve made us dinner and he was helping Stacy with the dishes, and he seemed like a doting husband and he treated her really well. And so I thought he was great. And then a couple of years later, the official family story became that Steve is evil, that he's trying to steal Melanie away from the family, and nobody should talk to him ever again. Later, I found out through reading FOIA documents and divorce documents and everything, kind of what the real deal was. And now looking back on it, it looks very much to me like Steve was trying to protect Melanie from the environment that was happening at Janice and Barry's house. And definitely, Stacy was very sick. She had type 1 diabetes. She developed gastroparesis as a result of disordered eating, which Melanie and the rest of the family want to deny that that's a thing, but she definitely had an aversion to germs. She had an aversion to sugar. She had an aversion to sodas. And Melanie, as a toddler, would repeat over and over, no candy, no Coke, no candy, no Coke. She was not allowed to have those things. And so it was very much that those things got passed on to Melanie. And if you read the divorce documents, Steve's original divorce complaint, he refers to the psychological issues in the family. He talks about a possible schizophrenic diagnosis for Barry. He alleges or sort of implies that there was some SA of Stacy by Barry, which actually kind of makes a lot of sense because she also had a huge aversion to the dentist. And if you do some research, there's a big connection between SA victims and dentists. I know it sounds strange, but I personally experienced it myself, so I can attest to that fact. And so if you dig into it, there is a lot there that Steve uncovers that the family was very upset about. And Barry actually showed up at Steve's place of work, pushed him up against the wall, held him by his neck, shoved a copy of the divorce complaint down Steve's shirt, and quoted scripture at him. All of these things are very typical of Barry's behavior. The police were called. He was accused of assault. So this was a big issue that happened. And it was all over the things that Steve was saying about Barry and the rest of the family in these divorce documents. Now, eventually, Steve did get awarded majority custody of Melanie. But if you can imagine, Melanie was 6 years old at the time. And Stacy was not allowing her to attend school on a regular basis. And she was also making Melanie afraid of germs, afraid of swimming pools, afraid of sugar. And so it was a really dysfunctional environment that Melanie was growing up in at a very formative time at the age of 6, when you're starting to form your own identity and your own opinions about who you are as a human being. The messages she was getting from her mother, for which there's a huge attachment between children and their mother. That's how they form their identity. So that's the kind of identity she was forming at that time. Steve gets awarded majority custody. Stacy is very ill. She has to go move back in with her parents, and her parents are taking care of her. Meanwhile, telling her all the time, "You're so sick, maybe it's just your time to go. Maybe you should just die." And Stacy is depressed. She's had her daughter taken away from her. So, of course, she's got all of these difficult things that she's dealing with. And so, from Melanie's perspective, as a 6-year-old child being taken away from your mother and not allowed to speak with your mother's family on any level, and being constantly told by your father that your mother's sick, that she's mentally ill, all of these things had to have a huge impact on Melanie as a child. Then, just a couple of years later, when Melanie's 8 years old, is when Stacy finally passes away. And I know probably some of you have already heard me talk about that story. I go into it in detail on both my Mormon Stories episode and my Hidden True Crime episode, but the circumstances were incredibly suspicious. The entire Cox family was in Hawaii, with the exception of Adam, who was working in Kansas, and Alex stayed in San Antonio. And he came over to my house, told me he was worried about Stacy, and asked me if I would go check on her with him. We found her non-responsive. She went to the hospital, and the doctors immediately said that she was in DKA, or diabetic ketoacidosis, and that she was not going to recover. And we made hospice arrangements for her. And she died about 4 or 5 days later. And her family, in the meantime, remained in Hawaii. They did not come home. Luckily, Steve was able to get there with Melanie in time for Melanie to be able to say goodbye to her mother.
Wow.
But of course, yeah, that was a really, I'm sure, horrible and hard thing for Melanie. And that was the first time that any of the family, had seen her in those couple of years. And so I'm sure that was super traumatic for her. And then reconnecting with her mother's family, who had been vilified to her by her dad this entire time. So I'm laying all of that groundwork, not in any way to excuse any of the behavior of Melanie at all, but just so that we understand what her growing up experience was like. After that, she still didn't have much contact with the Coxes because her dad tried to keep her away from them as much as possible. But then she had a really difficult relationship with her dad because of that. I understand she didn't get along with her stepmom very well. And then when she was old enough to reconnect with the Coxes, she did finally see Lori as kind of a mother figure to replace the mother that had abandoned her by dying. Not Stacy's fault that she died, but I think Melanie probably did feel abandoned as a daughter, and that creates a really unique mother wound in a child, and it creates a real need to fill that gap somewhere. And Lori was willing to step in to be that mentor for her. And so I think Melanie saw Lori as somebody that she wanted to trust, she wanted to believe, she wanted to follow and emulate, and all of those things. And so that's the position that she's in when Lori starts feeding her all this information about Brandon suddenly being gay when there was no sign of that before, and trying to feed her all this information about this new cult, and trying to get her to believe all of these new religious beliefs. And there were so many indicators that, like, if you want more light and knowledge, if you want more spiritual intelligence, you have to go out and search for it, and you have to find it. And Lori was right there presenting it through visions of glory and all of those other things. So I just want to put that out there, you guys. I'm not trying to excuse anybody's behavior, but I think it's really important to understand where people come from, to understand how they got where they are. And that's kind of where I landed at the end of this, when Lori was arrested and I didn't really know how much Melanie was involved or not involved. I wanted to believe that she was just going along with it because she wanted Lori as a mother figure. And I saw some of her early interviews and I was confused by a lot of what she said. She definitely comes across as not really connected. The whole
Mhm.
I don't recall so many times. It's understandable that she's a little scatterbrained because I think she has this huge cognitive dissonance between her wanting to believe what Lori said and also knowing that it's super harmful and not being able to figure that out and not being able to like sit with that and really understand it.
I
So
had never
Krusha,
thought of that. I'm sorry, I had never
go
thought of
ahead.
that. Like, I'm sorry, you're blowing my mind because
Yeah,
I
go
never
ahead.
thought about having cognitive dissonance with the crazy
Yeah.
stuff. You know, like, I was just like, "Oh, they're all of like mind." I know that not everybody thinks exactly the same, I understand. But, I mean, they literally were gathering up people and saying like-minded people. That was like their little club phrase or whatever. Greater light knowledge is another one. But I mean, it's just I thought I just never looked at that perspective. So I have some homework.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a mother wound, for any of us who have had difficult relationships with our mothers, or if you have been abandoned by your mother, mistreated by your mother, it really
Mhm.
creates a unique set of difficulties. And I started to journal about some of this, so I'm gonna come through with some of this stuff because I journaled a lot about it when I was trying to make these videos and try to get as much information as I can. So this is what I wrote about that. A mother wound creates a unique void in the life of an abandoned daughter. The daughter can develop codependent behaviors such as having poor boundaries, an excessive need for praise and approval, people pleasing, a weak sense of self, conflict avoidance, and difficulty being alone. These behaviors soothe the mother wound. For example, a wounded person might develop an identity as a people pleaser because it garners them praise and approval. It helps them avoid conflict. It helps them avoid boundary setting, and pleasing them helps them feel more accepted by other people. The abandoned daughter develops these behaviors as a coping mechanism, but the behaviors leave the individual susceptible to manipulation and coercive control. They may even engage in manipulation themselves in an effort to control their image and gain acceptance. And so I think that Melanie being in this system where she so needed acceptance and belonging from a mother figure, in order for her to push back against what Lori was saying, would mean the end, number one, the end of that relationship. Number two, her life would have been in danger. She would have immediately been labeled dark. She also would have lost her relationship with Alex, which was, by all accounts, she was very close to Alex and leaned on him for support and guidance as well. However, all of that said, Melanie was 100% a grown adult woman when she made the choices that put her children in danger. She had a fully formed frontal lobe, fully able to make these own choices for herself. And even though it would have been super harmful for her to push back, and she may have risked her life to do that, when it comes to your children, I'm sorry, for me, that's not a question. And I hope that at this point, Melanie has deconstructed that belief system. I don't know if I'm I'm gonna ask you in just a second, Krusha, if I had one question to ask her. I think that it would be, um, was there ever a point where you believed that your children were really in danger? Because they were labeled dark, and she was trying to go and get her children, and Alex was in the street waiting for her in a van that had weapons in it. And so, to me, I can't get over the dissonance that creates for me, because as a mother, I would never go there. I don't care what the stakes are. And I know, Krusha, you shared with me earlier what your one question would be. I wanna hear that.
Just out of all of Melanie's time going up to Rexburg, visiting, and then on October 31st, 2019, her and Alex packed up the U-Haul, left a few things out at the road, which, hey, I mean, you can't bring everything. So I don't think it was all like brand new stuff. I don't think it was all her children's things. That's just my take on that. Um,
Yeah.
that were set out and put for free or whatever. And then I believe just all the times of all the interaction, all the temple visits, the just it's nothing but steady communication, going to Hawaii, going to Utah, going to the St. George, Utah conference where Lori met Chad, and all those times. And y- you want me to, I'm saying this to Melanie, like, you want me to believe that. So Tylee was always with her friends and or at BYU, right? And JJ was always with a nurse and or a nanny and or with his friends or with Tylee. That was a new one, the Tylee one
Mm-hmm.
this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all I want to ask this to all the people, not that I'll ever get a straight answer from any of them, because yeah. But I, what did you think about the like what 4,000 pound Jeep that belonged to Tylee that was parked outside of the apartment? What'd you think? It was just broke down, or how's Tylee getting around? How, yeah, I mean, just all these things start. I mean, that's just one thing. That's just one of many, but
Yeah,
and
but it's kind of
I'm glad you're talking about Melanie, because we need somebody to give us some insight on Melanie, because that we haven't really had. So thank you.
yeah, and I agree with you about the Jeep. It's kind of one of the most obvious things, right? If Tylee really
Mhm,
was going to BYU, Idaho and attending classes there, she probably still would have been driving her Jeep, you know? And so for Melanie to show up after the children were already gone, right? And shows up there,
mhm,
but her Jeep is still there, but she supposedly is attending school, but she still would have been driving her car. You know, it's one of
mhm.
those things that's so obvious. But again, in order for Melanie to give any pushback, and remembering how manipulative Lori was and how
Chad.
vitriolic she could be when you questioned her at all, you just don't question
Mhm.
her. That's disloyal, right? And
Or
so to even ask a question like that would have been considered impertinent, and I'm sure would have cost her
Mhm,
some relational equity. So anyway, the bottom line that I want to get to is that I wanted to believe that Melanie was just an unhealed person who
mhm.
really wanted belonging and relied on Lori as a mother figure, but that her children were never in danger. However, after seeing the footage of her showing up at her in-laws to collect her 2 dark children with Alex sitting in the street in the car with the weapons in it, and then finally also after hearing the recordings that Ian made, Melanie is 100% all in. Like, there's
Mhm.
the main question I had for her at the beginning was
Yeah,
like, "Did you ever really believe it?" And hearing that recording answered that question for me.
yeah.
100% she believed it. She was all in on that. She got teary-eyed saying that Alex, who was dead, was going to be caring for the spirits of her 2 children that were labeled dark. So for me, that tells me she already believed that those children's spirits were gone,
Mhm.
and it was just gonna be a
Mhm.
matter of time before they
I
had
don't
to
get
be
it. I
killed
don't
as
get
well.
it. I don't understand the whole dynamic of it even. I'm just like, she's calling, so Melanie's calling in those, I call it the Pulowski tapes, right? And basically, because we waited on them forever,
Yeah.
and now that we have them, we're just like, take them back. Take them back. You can have them. No. I mean, they really do give us a lot of insight. A lot of these bizarre interactions, and details give us so many more pieces to the puzzle. Um, it's good, and it's a more clearer picture, more uh, fuller picture, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
here lately, I thought that, after Lori's trial, I was like, what? Where's all the stuff? But anyways, but with Melanie, how she was calling them mom and dad, that I was just like, okay, okay. Let me try and figure out if I can just kind of empathize with her, put myself in her shoes. She left her husband and he has her kids, right?
Mhm.
And for whatever justification, reasons, in her mind, and she's having to basically flee, and hide out in the cavity of a rock too, how they do. And then she met Ian, so she was kind of preoccupied, and that
Yeah.
was a whirlwind romance as well. But the when she started calling them mom and dad, I was just like, okay. So I don't really feel like she could just go to Steve, her dad. Like she kind of distanced herself or isolated herself and or was isolated
Yeah.
by the choices she made. I mean, I put it on the people, like Melanie was a grown woman. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen. This obviously happens, and it's really sad to see, but she's calling and connecting with Chad as dad, not my Uncle Charles, who was just murdered, and she calls him her uncle too, and I'm just like, "Oh my god." But it's like she doesn't even think of him, he's dead to
Yeah.
literally dead to her. And here's Chad, and then here's and I mean, I get that, how she's close to her aunt. I'm close to a couple of my aunts too. I mean, it's just the way it is. And I mean, I am JJ was my only biological nephew, and he was adopted by my uncle and Lori, and then, murdered, um, eventually. But it just so I'll never get to have that experience and that kind of relationship, and
Yeah.
but I mean, that's very fascinating to me, that whole thing.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
I'm watching some of these questions go by, so I'm just gonna put some of them up here. Kelly J says, Megan, did Melanie ever call Lori mom before this? Not that I know of. They always had pet names for each other. The nicknames in the Cox household are crazy wild, but
Oh, what are they?
I never heard Melanie call Lori mom before. So
Are they like
um,
regular nicknames or like
well, you know how
Kiki or,
Well, we've heard some of it in court today that, Bubby is one of those nicknames that's like it's like
yeah,
a version of brother, right?
say that a lot,
And
yeah.
when I was little, they used to call me Meagly Beagly, it's like
Oh
they
my
come up
gosh,
with a Summer
girl,
they
girl.
called Summer Shish, and then they called her
Right,
Rim for some reason, I didn't know that. It's like, I don't know where they come up with all these things.
it's different.
So Nana says, I always ask, but I never get an answer. Does Melanie get to see her kids? Yeah, she does. She has visitation with her children that's unsupervised, and so you can actually see all of their divorce documents. They're out there in the FOIA there somewhere. Gracie wants to know, does Kresha have a YouTube channel? Yes, Kresha, please
I
plug your
do.
channel.
Oh my gosh, I normally don't even appear on anybody else's channel, so I don't even know how to do it, but, it's difficult research, and that was just kinda by chance. It's, like, difficult. Cult is,
Cult is capitalized.
thank you.
Yeah.
And, it's been a crazy day, so
Yeah,
I'm just
I
like
get you.
blitz,
I
but yeah, difficult research, that's where you can find me. That's where I'm at, and I have
mm,
Facebook as well. We have a Facebook group that's private, so I have some moderators that take care of that, and then I'm on Twitter, but it's Kresha K, and Instagram, Kresha K as well, and I think that's as far as I wanna go with that.
yeah.
Just
Okay,
kidding.
thank you. Thanks, Fiona. I super appreciate you. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm gonna try to scroll through some of these and see if we have any more questions. Channel members, especially if you have a question, put 3 question marks or put some emojis by it that I can recognize, and mods, if you guys would help me out. Um,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I get to everybody that had a question that wanted answered tonight, because this is technically it's an ask me anything, so technically it's open
Well,
for 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 questions.
okay.
Does Melanie have 50/50 custody? I don't think so.
Hmm.
I think that she's considered the non-custodial parent. I think that she has, like, a expanded standard with, like, every other weekend or something like that.
She's the 3%. I'm just picking. Okay.
She has
Okay, I
3%
like to joke
custody.
a lot. So, all right, this is how I get through it.
Oh, goodness. Okay, I'm scrolling through some of these things too.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Uh,
Uh, I didn't see. Can you see questions too, Krusha?
mhm, it's,
Okay.
this one oh, okay, go ahead.
That's for
Sorry.
you. It's not for me. That's for you, Krusha.
Krista, are you going to the trial? I went by the trial, but I did not go into the trial. So, Chad is so boring. I'm good. I mean, I have a nice cushy seat right here. I can go, eat popcorn. I can drink my drinks and I can open my candy wrappers without court daddy getting on me. Good. Court daddy's
That's
like,
funny.
"All right." He micromanages, but I might I would like to go fly up there once we get a little closer to doomsday.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this it's time for a little comic relief and a little bit of a family story, and I hope my brother does not mind, does not mind me telling the story. Ben is my brother. Ben has appeared on Rex and Adam's podcast. Ben is a therapist, and he's also a superhero. Um, I'm super proud of him for the work that he's doing right now. And what was Ben's nickname? Well, I will tell you that in my family, nicknames tended to kind of like evolve over time. And so I think we started with Benjamin Bunny and then it evolved into other things. And before I give away the spoiler, I'll tell you that we moved down to San Antonio, which is close to the Texas-Mexico border, obviously. And we have a very large population here of people who formerly resided in Mexico or whose families were from Mexico. And I hope this is a safe space because I'm going to say something that is going to be pretty controversial here. And it's not intended to be any disrespect to anybody at all. This was a very innocent thing that happened. Okay. I had a nickname for my brother, Ben, and I called him, in sort of just like at home all the time, not out in public or anything like that. Well, one day, shortly after we moved to San Antonio, all of our family was at SeaWorld in San Antonio, which is a very big, crowded place.
Yeah.
And my brother was walking about probably 50 feet in front of me, but we wanted to turn and go this way. And so I wanted to get his attention. So I called his nickname to tell him that we were turning. And when I called him his nickname, everybody turned around and stared at me. And I thought that they were all going to kill me because Ben's nickname was Beaner.
Oh my god. Oh
And
my god, yeah, so they were
for
about to
those
get
of
you.
you who don't know, that is a derogatory term for people from Mexico because they eat beans, and I meant no disrespect by it.
Innocent.
I really it was totally an innocent thing. I didn't know there was anything wrong with that until I
Mhm.
said it, and when I saw those looks, I was like, "Okay, what did I say?" And I somebody else
What?
had to tell me later that I almost died at SeaWorld, y'all, because of a nickname, so I
Like,
apologize.
later that day or later in life? Because how long did they let you go doing that? You
They
know?
Nobody said anything to me at all that day,
Wow.
and then when we got home, I was like, "What happened? Like, why is it that I was getting all of these death?"
Everybody's like, "Church?" Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
terrible. I'm really sorry,
Wow.
you guys, that's just what happened. Okay,
And it
so
does, innocently.
back to real questions here, you guys. Let's see. Does Lori know about the books and podcasts? Last that I heard, which was a long time ago before her trial, that she knew that her trial was bigger news than
Oh,
COVID was, and she was really proud about that fact.
yeah.
That was kind of the last thing that I heard about that. So, I think she enjoys the spotlight and she enjoys the fact that people are talking about her, which is why
Mhm.
after her sentencing statement, I wrote a statement that I read on Hidden True Crime where I said that my greatest wish was that everybody would just forget about her and that
Mm.
at her next trial, there would be no cameras and no reporters and no reporting. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately and thinking about whether or not I'm going to go to Phoenix. And I really feel like maybe I
Mhm.
won't,
What?
you know? I think I won't. I don't know. I go back and forth about it because I see value in it and I also see value in leaving it behind as well. So,
Plus, we'll have a celebration of life, there too, so you have to go to
I
that,
w I
and you
will
have
go
to
to
go,
that. I don't
and I
know if
won't
I'll
cry all day.
I don't know if I'll go to court or not.
Oh,
What
yeah.
did Lori see in Derby and Chad? Well, I can tell you, Jensen, I did
Oh,
actually an entire video on this on my channel.
did you?
You wanna go look it up, because I think there was something there. Patty, did you know what beaner meant? No, I had no idea that that was a derogatory thing to say. I had no I otherwise, I definitely would not have shouted it in public.
Right?
Um, that
Oh
just
my
there's no
god.
way. Oh my gosh.
I will never tell y'all my nickname ever, and I will come at my uncle and my uncles and my cousins, it hadn't happened in, like, what, 3 years, so I'm like, "Hmm." I'm just waiting on the day.
Yeah.
Soon.
Kelly Cat, I don't know what to tell you about this. I don't know if any charges are pending. I do know that Melanie was not offered
Oh,
immunity for her anything that she said in court, so I don't know if charges are forthcoming or not. Sometimes it's one of those things where they go after the people that are most likely to be convicted and they sort of leave other people alone. So I don't know what's going to happen in that case, but it'll be interesting to see. Um, Lori's parents still in denial. Did they send her commissary money? I don't know about the money. I do know that Chad was sending her money for a little while till he was arrested at least. And then
right.
I mean, Lori's parents in denial. I think I've heard that Lori's mom still visits with her, but they don't talk about the case. I think that's what Adam said. So,
I I
that's
I don't know
pretty
how that
much
works, how do you not
I
talk I'd have to talk
well,
about it.
yeah. I couldn't do it if it was my child. I
Mm-mm.
would have to get real with them and have a
Mhm.
real conversation. Samantha, do you know if Melanie is still LDS? Ian stated he's no longer religious. Yes, true.
Right.
I wonder, I think that she did express some doubts at some point, but I don't know. I don't know what her religious beliefs are at this point. I think I answered this, that Lori's mom definitely visits her from time to time. I think she has video calls with family members, and we know that Emma Daybell was talking to her at some point. So, there was that. Ladybug Lady, this is a really long question.
You mean answer.
We do talk some about this on other videos on the channel, but I think a lot of it had to do with her, family of origin being so dysfunctional and, her having just some unmet needs that she, tried to fulfill in some really unhealthy ways. So that's the shortest
Mhm.
possible answer that I can give on that one. Um, Gracie, how did Tylee's dad die? I'm gonna refer you over to Annie Cushing's channel, A Murderous Heart. She is Joe Ryan's brother. She has a very strong belief that Lori killed um, Joe Ryan, or that at least that she was involved somehow. There's a lot of suspicion around that. However, I do also always have to say the police reopened that case twice and twice
Yes.
um, found it not worthy of pursuing for whatever reason. So that's still a big question. Um, and all of that. La Mesa Filipino Food Club, one of these days you should send me a message because I've told you before, I love your screen name and I want to connect over that. Megan, do you think there was more SARE Barry Cox within the Cox household? I remember saying my thoughts on Lori 2019-20 on Reddit. I believe the kids were hypersexualized due to exposure. I think that's definitely possible.
I
I
do think.
can personally confirm that Barry has been under investigation for SA at least once. I don't know the final results of that investigation. I do know that
Aw.
some people have come forward with allegations against him. But as of this point, I always do have to say he has never been formally charged with anything, and of course, never tried or convicted with anything. But I think there is a
Ooh.
lot of suspicion there.
That
Um,
just blew my mind too. Okay.
yeah.
I mean,
Titus
allegedly, you know.
allegedly.
Right.
Allegedly blew my mind. Titus 2 Jesus Girl, any word on how Lori feels about Chad throwing her under the bus? I don't know. I'm sure she probably thinks it's all part of the plan. She's
Mhm.
delusional, so she's never gonna, accept anything at face value.
Mhm.
Um, AJ, what's the strangest detail about this case that no one seems to talk about? For me, it's the mask. That mask is really weird. Um,
The monkey mask? I thought it was a monkey mask forever. And
yeah.
then when I saw this last time, it was like an old man, and I was 'cause it triggered me that morning. That was day 2 of Lori's trial. I saw I'm sorry. That was your question, but I hijacked it. I
No,
just
it's fine.
Mom wasn't there. She went and had brunch with Brandon, because they had both testified the first day. She didn't wanna see what they were gonna be showing, and I was like, "Oh, I got this, mom. I've got this. I got this." All brave and tough, and that's not it at all. It has nothing to do with being brave or, uh, you know, it's not that at all. It's just something you never want in your mind, and I just happened to be you're literally right there behind prosecution. You can blow on their clothes,
Yeah.
and, Rob Wood was putting something onto the Elmo, and Rachel was getting some papers together, Rachel Smith, and I saw yeah, she was, pulling up the next slides, I guess you could say. I saw the red pajamas, and I was just like, "Okay, okay," and we had already went over the rope, the tape, the
Yeah.
mask, okay, and I was like, "What the hell?" And yeah, I got out of there ASAP, but I gotta tell you this, I don't get to share this very often. And I didn't really realize what was happening at the time, so, you know but so that very morning, that same morning I'm talking about, "Hey, mom," um, I left on the first chance I could, I gathered everything and "All rise," right? And so I'm standing up and I'm packing my bag, and then we sit back down and, everybody's leaving, but, I'm putting my things away. Obviously, I have a lot of things. No. But, and I mean, there's a defense table. It's right there, You can see Lori, you could see, prosecution's right here, and then you can see jurors and everything else. And, okay, so I stood up and her and I, like, locked eyes, and it was the weirdest. There's nothing usually whenever you lock eyes with somebody or, look into someone else's eyes, you communicate or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's an
it
understanding between the 2 of you.
there was nothing. It's like, all I can remember is just, like, looking past her or beyond her or either way, it was
Yeah,
awkward, it was long, and it was just I didn't really think that much of it at that time.
yeah.
And so I left and I walked around the block to my mom's, condo where she was. I helped her unload groceries. She got a text. She was like, "Oh my God, we have to get back to the courtroom." And I was like, "Don't do it, mom. It's a trap." You know, like, don't go. You don't need to see those images. And then, oh my God. So we get up there, got there just in time. And Lori did not want to go back in the courtroom.
Yeah,
And I was like, "Ew," like, I just for what it's worth, I'm not saying I'm a anything, I'm a nothing burger, especially to her. Now, I'm Kay's daughter, so,
mhm.
I mean, so it dawned on me and I was like, "Oh my god, I just had that long, weird, awkward stare exchange where nothing was said, but I hope like hell, whatever it was, I hope it scared the crap out of her and she didn't wanna come back."
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, it's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot. There's so much to unpack. And there's a ton of questions, and I'm super far behind, so I apologize. I'm gonna try to get to as many of these as I can, you guys. But also, it is almost well, it's past 9:30 on a Thursday night, and I know for a fact that one of my children needs a poster board because of course they do. So we're gonna have to get off here at some point.
Yes, you
Um,
do.
Ashley Ashley Sparks, thank you so much. Karen Adams, do you think Lori's parents will be at her trial? Um, if they I hope what I hope is that they will be subpoenaed to testify because they were there when Charles was murdered, and they did have contact with Lori and Alex right afterwards. So I hope that they will be there.
And
If they're not
yeah.
subpoenaed, though, I doubt it if they're not subpoenaed.
Wow.
Which Melanie wasn't offered immunity. I was talking about Melanie Pulowski. I don't know what Melanie Gibb was offered.
No,
Um,
I don't think she
so
was.
yeah, I don't think so either.
I really think Dilemma's the only one.
Yeah, this is one thing we didn't talk about today. There was a motion on the table to dismiss the charges in the case. Let's just say that John Pryor was trying to get the judge to dismiss because he
Oh,
didn't believe that the state had met their burden, which I think obviously he has to do his job. He has to put up a defense, but that was kind of ridiculous. And then um, of course, the judge denied, but the judge brought up that there was an error in the dates that the file was that the prosecution filed in the most recent amendment to the case. Where there was a clerical error, and they stated JJ's death dates as actually Tylee's death dates. And so the judge brought it up because it's his responsibility to call things out like this when there's an error in order to prevent a mistrial. And so there was a whole
mhm.
big hearing after court was over today regarding that charge for. Thank goodness that the judge ruled that count 4 is still in play for JJ. But it was a close call there for a little while. I was really nervous that something
Yeah.
terrible was going to happen. So we talked right after that, Kresha and I did. And when we both were just like, whoa, that was crazy. It was
After my medication
it was
kicked in.
heart-wrenching,
Oh my god.
heart-wrenching.
I was, don't go to my channel today because they're F-bombed all in the middle
Mm,
of it. I'm telling on myself because 'cause I'm just, I'll do it before you can.
yeah,
So, just saying, I'm an adult and it pissed me off. So,
yeah, yeah, it was
just
super
it was
tough.
something so minor that there's 4 freaking well-educated, experienced altogether. 2 of them, I believe, came from the actual attorney general
Yeah,
office, and I'm just like, "Nobody could proofread it? Nobody could just proofread it one
no.
time?
And then
This
there
is
was
so
also
big."
there was something like this that happened on the last trial too, where there was some silly clerical error, and it
Mhm,
it was the main reason, I think, why the death
mhm.
penalty got taken off the table in Lori's case.
Even
So it's
the
like,
language.
you
Yeah,
guys,
like,
these
and
are
or the it was something silly like that, and then they wanted to change like, in prosecution for Lori's trial, yeah, they wanted to change it, like, that week, and I was just like, "What is this?" You
yeah,
know?
yeah, for
But
real.
these are the same, officials, not the same people, but Idaho officials, looking into the death penalty and everything, kinda researching into that over the years, just kinda see what to expect.
Mhm,
And, when you have this is, allegedly, I guess, but it's written in news stories and everything, and
mhm,
but, Idaho went to allegedly go procure, the lethal drugs to, do the lethal injection to, execute, for the death penalty or whatever, and they showed up with a suitcase of cash, okay? And
mhm.
like, you can't you don't do that. That's not what we
Yeah.
do here. And so it's like, no wonder I mean, okay, I don't really care about the death penalty because why? Because it's a non-issue in my opinion, because they're just gonna be there anyways forever and ever, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, that's on them, but it just I don't know, very sketchy or very different I'll just say a very different way of doing things.
yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm gonna try to get some more of these real quick. Will Chad's kids testify? I think they have been subpoenaed to testify for the defense. I'm frankly a little concerned about what they might say because I think they've been brainwashed by their dad. Ashley Sparks, thank you so much for this. How did Lori react when her older sister passed or other tragedies before this event? I don't remember specifically what Lori's reaction was when Stacy died. It was obviously a super traumatic time for a lot of us for a lot of reasons. So it was difficult. I don't remember. I really only remember my parents and Janice's reaction and some of the crazy family stories that were going around at the time. So it was a really hard time. Ladybug Lady, do you offer coaching or support or guidance for women looking for therapy for life's traumas? Yes, I do actually. My website is third-verse.com. I do offer coaching.
Yeah.
There is a free how to hire a therapist guide on there. I also help people find therapists if it feels overwhelming for you. And I always want to help people to navigate these life situations because having gone through it myself, it can be really overwhelming to try and nobody should do it alone. So I'm always here for people who need help on that. Patty, is it G? Patty G. What are people's thoughts on whether Chad believes his BS? Did he know he was manipulating or did he truly believe it? What are his beliefs now? I'm going to do a whole deep dive on this, you guys. It's in the works, so it's coming soon. I've gone back and forth about it, but I think after this week's testimony, I have a more solid answer for myself. So this question is for Crusha, Samantha. What are Lindsay and Rob like? They seem so even-keeled and lovely.
They're just very micromanaged, you know? They're very I'm not an organized person, obviously. I'm sure you can tell. But, like but I depend on other people's organization. I just not all the way, you know what I'm saying? That's a quality that I would like to have more of, but I have ADHD and yeah, it can really get the best of you, but you kinda learn to mask and cope with it and all that stuff. So, and I already forgot what the question was, see? 'Cause that's what I do right there.
I took it down already. Sorry, I'm trying to oh, they were asking about Lindsay and Rob and, what are they
I
like?
mean, I hugged Rob. Actually, I met him now that yeah. My memory really does suck ever since this all happened. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's just from the trauma. Uh, I don't know. I'm sure it's a combination of everything, but
Yeah.
Um, they're nice. Whenever I met Rob, I made it a point to shake his hand. I wanted to shake his hand. I wanted to look him in the eyes. I wanted to get a feel for who is handling who's handling Tylee and JJ's justice.
Yeah.
And, I was amazed by like, I think the first few times I showed up to court for Lori, I was just like watching Lori like, "How in the hell can you just sit there and just not say, 'Hey, this is what happened,' you know, and just tell everybody, and then whatever." Um, and then I would look at Rob and the prosecution, and I'm like, "How are they doing this and not really intermingling the freaking belief system with church and state?" Because to me, I'm a nevermo. I've never been a Mormon, didn't even know my Uncle Charles and my Aunt Lori were Mormon. Okay, so she's a lame missionary, first off, or they didn't want my kind, maybe.
Yeah.
No. But, I mean, it just never was it was a non-issue. I really didn't even know that, you know? So, going into this, I just wanted to learn. I was like, "Where do Chad and Lori's beliefs differ from their shared church," you know? And
Mhm.
anyways, here I am, and here we are, and whew,
You went down a rabbit hole.
I'm an honorary ex-Mormon.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
Heidi's mind, this is a great question. I don't think we have time to really deep dive into it right now, but what does he have for defense beside the Daybell kids? I know he's going to call a couple of expert witnesses to try and rebut
Mhm.
some of the experts from the prosecution. Shocked or changed my opinion? Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some things that shocked me that were different from the last trial. I think I've tried really hard to like post something every time something like that happens because
Right.
it's always a little mind-blowing amidst
Mhm.
all of the stuff that we already know, right? And so I've been trying to talk about some of that, and I'll continue to talk about it while the trial's going on. And
Right.
then Eleanor, in Lori's trial, was anyone else extremely upset when Summer did not present a victim statement on behalf of Tylee? I think anger is a healthy
Mm.
emotion. I think that we should honor our anger, and I think we should express it in healthy ways. And I also was angry that she had an opportunity to present a victim statement, but she chose not to. I don't know the reasons why
Well
she
well,
didn't, though. And I
she kinda
also
did.
well,
She kinda did, though, and I'm like, "Well," You are
She
almost there.
she made a statement to East Idaho News after the trial, after the verdict was over. I can't pretend to know what Summer's going through. I'm sure this is super traumatic for her and difficult.
Mhm.
And so I can't question her actions, but it does make me sad that she didn't
Yeah.
choose to be there in court or let someone else be there to speak for Tylee. So
Right.
when did Lori start going hyper religious? I believe it was around the 2015-16 timeframe when she started reading near death experience books. That's kind of what I think. Rosemary Romero, you have so many great questions that I don't know how to answer all of them. I'm going to try. Um, do we find the trials
Mm.
triggering? Do we suffer from PTSD as a result of watching or hearing? If I still had any symptoms of PTSD, I wouldn't watch. So for me, um,
Well,
it's for me, watching the trial is a way for me to process. So what about you, Krusha?
that's how my mom is. She wants to be in there. Now, I've noticed not so much this round, so I don't know if it's affected her. I'll have to ask her. I'm just that's my mom, so it's just kind of my observation about her attendance, and but Larry wants to be there every day. I do not like courtrooms. I was actually traumatized when I was like 12 and I was on the stand, and I mean it was just super traumatizing, and so that's where mine comes from. But it's like I'm on like hyper sensitive, oh my god, overstimulated, so everything's going off, and so it wears me out. And it's just, I mean, I wanted to see Lori. I don't really care to see Chad. I mean, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
we hate your
Um,
books, Chad.
you're a terrible author, Chad. You have no imagination, Chad. Those are my favorite insults. Thumbs
Ooh.
down, Chad.
Okay, so Nicole Heidemann, the tactical specialist, right,
Mhm.
who read the James and Lana story into record, and so right before she got into reading it, she was like, "So do you want me to read it with the grammatical errors?"
Yeah.
She just was kinda picking at that, and I was like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, get him."
Do you want me to
So
revise because this is horribly juvenile and toxic? No, we want you to read it exactly how it was written. So, just 2 more things, and then we're gonna end here. Is Rob Wood single? I don't know, you guys, and I don't know if Ray
okay,
Hermosillo
I
is
don't think
single
so.
either, but I think the
Mm-mm.
inquiring minds wanna know.
Fair
And then
taken.
finally, it's not a question, but it's a comment from Istanbul TR. I think he means to say, Megan, don't back down because of the reaction you get from the relatives. Don't let them control you. If they were good, they would have helped Charles. The public already knows them. That's exactly 100% my mantra, you guys. I don't have room in my life for unhealed people. I don't have room in my life for people who are willing to harm children. I don't have room in my life for anybody who treats me with unkindness or disrespect. And I will continue to tell the truth because that's what I do. I will continue to shine a spotlight on the super harmful things that I encounter in my life because I think that examining those things helps all of us to heal and helps all of us to move on and be better people and ultimately have a happier life. And so I don't give any credence to the criticisms that I receive from my family members, mainly because I'm one of the only people that's out here talking about the reality of the unhealthy behaviors and harmful behaviors both in the family system and in the church culture. And one of my favorite quotes from Brené Brown is, if you are not actually in the arena getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. And I think that's a pretty great place to leave it tonight. Kresha, thank you so much for coming on my channel and contributing tonight. Thanks for your insights and opinions. I heard that Kay was here. Thank you for showing up, Kay. I always love to see you out there. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to everybody who came tonight to listen to our opinions on the case. And there's more to come. Both of us have more to say about all of these things, and we're going to continue to post. I personally am going to do a deep dive, a little bit of a deeper dive on the phone call that we heard this last week in trial and some of the other things that came out. And so, sad news from Kay Woodcock tonight, you guys. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. But thank you anyway. Thank you both. Where did it go? Where did it go? I thought oh, Kay, where did
Oh,
it
there
go?
she
Here it
is.
is. There it is.
Rob and but we're not dead, okay? So we can still look, okay?
We can appreciate a strong man. That
And we
is
do. I mean,
important.
I do.
And a strong woman. I have to say, I have a crush on Lindsay Blake. I think she's amazing. So, you
Heather
guys,
Daybell's my girl crush. Not like
yes,
that, but I'm just like,
absolutely.
"Thank God."
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful for you and
Mhm.
for everything that you are speaking out about with the church and the problems and all the things, right? Visions of glory. Oh my gosh. And Heather Daybell, okay? Straight up, I felt so alone, you know? First and yeah, I'm just glad y'all are here, that we need more of of your kind. I can't talk, okay?
Thank you.
Oh gosh.
Well, I Mutual Appreciation Association, Kresha, because I appreciate everything that you're doing and willing to dig into this so deeply and do so much research on it. So I appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe to Difficult Research.
Thank you.
Please go out and get your wounds healed so that you don't hurt other people. Go do some introspective work, and more than anything else, take care of yourself, love yourself, and give big hugs to everybody in your life that is important to you. Thank you guys. Love you. Have a great night.